Hi there fabric jugglers, it's Babs here from Fiery Phoenix, and today's tutorial, being recorded on a bright but chilly day today, is all around turning up the hemline on your jeans. This was a tutorial requested by Trudy Williams. Sorry, I completely messed that up there for you, but hi there Trudy, and thank you for your suggestion. Basically, we're going to be taking a standard pair of jeans, and these are my daughters. You can tell by being teeny tiny and having lovely butterflies all over them. And what we're going to be doing today is turning up the hem so that you actually keep this original hemline. Rather than turning up and then you just end up with some denim that you're trying to replicate a hemline with, we're going to actually take you through the process today and show you how to retain this hemline once you've actually finished with the alteration. For this, we're going to need some pins. We're going to need some denim needles, and we're also going to need a zipper foot. So you can see what one of those looks like. If you need links to any of those items, then I'll have them in the description below. But for now, go grab your goodies and let's get sewing. What we're going to be recording today is a tutorial which shows you how to retain this seam. It involves flipping, turning one row and some pressing. But really it's so that we keep the look of the original stitching. We don't have to try and match thread, we don't have to try and match stitch length, and we don't have to try and match the actual length of the seam. If we were to take up a pair of trousers in a more traditional fashion, you would fold them over, pin, press, and then hem along the inside. But you'd have to be recreating this fold, this hem, the pin tuck. You'd have to be recreating the top stitching effect so that everything matched in. Whereas what we're going to do is kind of cheat a little, and we're just going to keep that hem. Before we start though, a couple of words of caution that you do need to take into account. If you have some decoration like there is on this, again, incredibly dirty pair of jeans, I do apologise. You know, my daughter's grown out of them, so there's little point keep washing them now, but they are useful for tutorials to demonstrate different techniques. So for this particular pair, they obviously have embroidery down one side, and that is very beautiful. But when it comes to taking them up, we do need to be careful. If I were to try and take them up by a couple of inches and then fold the hem down, we're cutting across the bottom of the butterfly. So this particular technique, and in fact taking up or hemming these particular trousers, is not going to be very easy unless you're going to be doing just a teeny tiny amount, in which case I have to say probably what's the point of all the effort. However, if you don't have the embroidery, then this is an excellent technique. The other thing to take into account is how straight a leg the trousers are. Now in this case they are a very straight leg, but if we had a flared out pair, the width at the bottom would be significantly greater than the width at the point that we're trying to turn them up, which means this technique won't work. So the width of the cuff that you're looking at the ankle, if it is significantly wider than the leg that you're attempting to fold it up onto, this technique isn't going to work for you. We need a fairly straight leg. It doesn't have to be desperately straight, but it does need to be reasonably straight, because we are in effect doing this and then sewing across at the point that we want the hem length to be. But that does mean that this width needs to be very close to the width at the base of the trouser leg. So keeping those two items in mind. So the first thing we need to do is work out how long we want our jeans to be and how large of a cuff size we're going to take up. Now what I've done is measured and pressed these already. Now as they're an older pair of jeans, measuring from the bottom where they're all curved and stretched isn't actually very helpful. So what I've had to do is measure the length from the top of the jeans, from all the way up from the belt, so that I've got a flat line that I actually want. This is particularly important if you're working with an older pair of jeans that have been stretched and moved out of shape, as you can see here. When we turn these, we want them to be the right side out. We're going to turn out the hem that we're going to be taking up, and we need to pin it in place. Now, if you've pressed it as securely as I have, you probably don't need to pin it. To be fair, I'm not going to pin. However, I would strongly suggest, if you're not confident and comfortable working this way, it may be worth you just popping at the very least a pin in at either seam line, so that you've got those being held in place, because what we want is to try and keep this as invisible a make as possible. So I'm just going to pop one pin in here, which will hopefully help me keep these stitches in perfect alignment. I say perfect, but nothing's perfect in this world. If you've seen any of my other tutorials and heard me waffling on, you'll realise that I'm not a perfect person. And then we'll pop another pin in this side to keep, or to try and keep that in place as well. Now what I'm going to do is just move across to the sewing machine. Hope my camera doesn't fall down. And we've put on the zipper foot, and I've also swapped out my needle so that I've got a denim needle in here. This is a slightly larger, stronger and sharper needle to go through the multiple layers that we need to. And I'm ever so sorry about the airplane noise. Hopefully you can still hear me over the noise of the jet. To work out the amount that you want to take up off of your jeans, ignore any turns and hems and just concentrate on the distance from the waistband through to the base of the jeans. And what you need to think about is how much shorter you want that to be, whether that's an inch shorter, 2 inches shorter, 4 inches shorter, whatever that amount is, that's what we're thinking about, because that is the amount that we need to create in our fold. So if we want a 3-inch shortening of the trouser, we need to have 1.5 inches in our fold, and that's 1.5 inches above the actual hemline. So, for example, the amount that we're going to be removing from a pair of jeans will be this distance times 2, because this is going to be what's left at the bottom of the jean. So it's this distance above the hemline that we need to take into account. So it's this times 2, because you've got this side of the fabric and you've got this side of the fabric, which is going to be effectively removed from the length of the jean. So if you want to have 2 inches removed, you would need to fold this down to 1 inch here. So you've got 1 inch this side, 1 inch on the inside, and then when that is folded down, that will give you your 2 inches removed from the overall length of the jean. So hopefully that's clear for you, and that's a sensible explanation. If not, then I'll have it written down in the description and also in the accompanying article, which will be linked in the description as well. That bit can be a little bit confusing for people, but again, because we're keeping the original hemline, you can't take the distance of that hem into account when you are making the alteration, the shortening of the leg. You need to ignore that and look at the overall length that you want to reduce by, and then take that overall length out and then pop the hem back on. And now let's move on to actually sewing something. So we have a zipper foot so that we can get nice and tight to this this hemline, and we have a denim needle because we need a strong needle for this process. And I'm going to start at the back of the foot, at the back of the trouser leg rather. And what you do is slide this in, and you want this to be as tight as possible to this hemline. So we want that needle to go in as close as we can get it, and make very, very sure that you're not sewing the trouser leg to itself underneath. So let's start and see where we get to. keep pulling it round, but what we really want to do is make sure that these stitches line up as closely as possible with the originals. And what we're going to need to do is just lift this up slightly to help it over the bulk of the multiple layers there. I don't know whether you could hear that it stopped moving forward, but you need to lift up so that you can actually get across this large bulk of fabric. Once over that, the rest should be fairly straightforward, nice plain sailing. But still, make sure you do not sew the other side of your cuff to yourself, or you will have a closed jean, not a shortened jean. And again, be careful when we come up to the next bulk of fabric. We want this to be in alignment, and we need to pay attention that this isn't going to get stuck. The presser foot needs to be raised if possible. If you are raising the presser foot, make sure that the needle stays in a down position. And every time we pull the trouser leg round, again, make sure the needle is in that down position. And the underside is pulled well away. I think we're getting stuck again. So now that we've actually got this sewn all the way around, what we're going to do is flip it and press it so that we're going to keep this as neat and tidy as we can possibly make it. So you take your iron, make sure that it is as warm as can be for your denim, and what you need to do is pull the denim tight as you are pressing, because we want this to look as invisible a line as possible. And the way to do that is by keeping that tension and keeping as little fabric folded under as possible. And then we'll do the same on the reverse of the leg. We just press that out, and there you have a hemline that is as close to invisible as you're going to get for a pair of jeans, keeping the original hem. Now on the inside, you may find that, depending on the amount of fabric you've turned up, that this is a large amount. Generally it isn't, but you could hand tack in place if you wanted to. Just pop a couple of hand stitches in, or you could trim it off and overlock the edges if you wanted to. Both of those I think are probably a little bit excessive, especially after it's been pressed in such a way that it keeps that up there, but that excess fabric away and out of sight. But I think this is a pretty nice, neat way of turning up your jeans whilst keeping the original hem in place. So if we look at that a little bit further away and in real light, you have one hem, which I think is pretty darn neat, and then you have the original hem. And to be fair, I don't think that you can really see too much of a difference between the two, especially if they're being worn and run around in. So I think that's quite a natty way of shortening your trousers, your denim, and hopefully that's going to be of some use to you. Hopefully it will give you some inspiration, and a big thank you to Trudy for suggesting that tutorial. If you like what you see on this channel, please think about subscribing. It means that everything automatically falls into your subscription feed without having to come and look again to see what I've released this week. I release updates on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and if you suggest a topic for a tutorial in the comments below, then you might get a shout out like Trudy did as well. So a great big thank you to everybody who takes the time to comment on these tutorials. If you have any suggestions, if you've got improvements, if you've got different techniques to achieve the same sort of end result, please share them. This is all about sharing. It's not about me telling you what you must do. It's about sharing the knowledge, and I love to learn new techniques, so please let me know new techniques in the comments, and hopefully I shall see you around another time. Have a lovely day. Bye.